Well, guys, we are back on the heels of the Trump administration and those innocent people that they murdered.
Donald Trump's Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, or at least that's what it feels like this week, but hey, it's only Wednesday. On Monday, Hegseth, with the help of White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, attempted to throw Admiral Frank Bradley under the bus, saying he's the individual responsible for the highly controversial double tap boat strikes in the Caribbean on September 2nd, which lawmakers on both sides of the aisle and lawyers and experts believe may have constituted a war crime. Yesterday, Pete Hegseth at Donald Trump's cabinet meeting seemed to endeavor to further embarrass himself, with Hegseth claiming, hey, I wasn't even in the room for that second boat strike, which was not exactly the impression he left with his former colleagues at Fox News when he went on their airwaves the day after the strike took place.
That was definitely not artificial intelligence. I watched it live. We knew exactly who was in that boat. We knew exactly what they were doing, and we knew exactly who they represented. And that was Tren de Aragua, a narco-terrorist organization designated by the United States, trying to poison our country with illicit drugs.
Brings us to today, almost a full circle moment for Pete Hegseth and the Trump White House. The initial massive scandal, which embarrassed the country and Donald Trump and his national security team, Signalgate. It was a massive national security breach. It was made possible entirely by the sloppy and haphazard nature of Donald Trump's national security team when they shared national security information, including war plans. And then former National Security Advisor Michael Waltz accidentally added Jeffrey Goldberg, a journalist from The Atlantic, to that group chat on Signal. A damning new report is being released from the Pentagon's Inspector General. That is the top watchdog at the building that Hegseth is in charge of running. That report says that Pete Hegseth shared information in that Signal chat, information that put mission operations and servicemen and women at risk about a pending military operation in Yemen that took place in March of this year. The Defense Department's Inspector General finds that while the mission ultimately was not jeopardized, Pete Hegseth violated his department's own policies when he used Signal, a commercial messaging app that is not approved for sharing classified information. The Inspector General's report, scheduled to be published on Thursday, was described to The Atlantic by numerous U.S. officials familiar with its findings. Now, while that controversy ultimately led to Michael Waltz being removed from his position as Donald Trump's first national security advisor, Pete Hegseth and the White House have maintained that he did nothing wrong. The Pentagon's chief spokesperson today called the Inspector General report a total exoneration of Hegseth. It's important to remember that if anybody did this who was not named Pete Hegseth, like any of the men and women farther down the chain of command, those men and women would be thrown out of the military and almost certainly face criminal prosecution, maybe even worse. And keep that in mind as we're covering Hegseth in the White House, throwing people like Admiral Bradley under the bus for an act being described by Democrats and Republicans this week as a, quote, potential war crime. The Atlantic goes on to report this, quote, current and former government officials have told us that if lower level employees shared such sensitive information on a commercial platform, they would certainly be fired and possibly prosecuted. The Inspector General's conclusions seem likely to create an impression among the military rank and file that there are two sets of rules, one for the Defense Department's presidentially appointed leadership and one for everybody else. And that is not a surprise in Pete Hegseth's Pentagon. It is the culture he's ushered in. It is what we on the outside, the American people, have come to expect in his nearly 10-month tenure. running the largest military on the planet, but it's also an embarrassment, not only for the nation that the military serves, but for the men and women in it, and for its commander-in-chief, frankly. Donald Trump, when it calls into question just how much more embarrassment Donald Trump is going to tolerate from his hand-picked, bipartisanly opposed Secretary of Defense. It's where we start today with some of our favorite reporters and friends. Shane Harris is here. He covers national security and intel for The Atlantic. He is bylined on the reporting about the IG report we just read from. With me at the table for the hour, my friend and colleague, senior political analyst, contributing host on Pod Save America, host of the podcast Runaway Country, Alex Wagner is here. Shane, take us through what you know about the IG report.
Well, this has been some time in the making. We know that. We'd anticipated it even a few months ago, but it's now finally going to be published on Thursday. And people who've read it say that it is pretty unambiguous about what Pete Hegseth did, that the information that he shared in that signal chat, which, to remind everyone, included very detailed information about the time that U.S. warplanes would be over their targets in Yemen, that if that information had fallen into the wrong hands, it could have jeopardized the lives of U.S. forces as well as the success of the mission. And, you know, I think this is important to repeat because from the beginning, the real issue with the way this entire signal chat was set up is that the members of that group obviously did not seem to know that they had included an outsider, namely my editor, Jeff Goldberg, in that group. And it would have been trivially easy to add anyone else to that group as well. So from the very beginning, the security of this channel that was talking about an active military operation had effectively been compromised. And I think that that's really a key finding of the Inspector General report to say, look, the information, had it fallen into the wrong hands, could have been, very significant losses could have occurred. And the other is that the report is clear as saying that the information was classified at the time that Secretary Hegseth received it. And this is really important too. Information like battle plans and operations of the kind that he shared are presumptively classified because of the damage that could be done if they were exposed. Administration officials, including Secretary Hegseth, have long said the information was not classified. So this is going to raise some really interesting questions when we see the full report. Did he declassify it before he put it in that channel? Did he affirmatively take steps to do so? What is clear from people who've read it is that the IG says the information was classified when Pete Hegseth received it from U.S. Central Command, which has responsibility for the military operation. So, ultimately, I think this is a real affirmation of what we originally reported, which was that this was an extraordinary security breach and that the secretary should not have been handling this information in the way that he did.
I mean, Shane, I understand that we are it certainly is as a journalist, it's part of a story you're covering. It is possible that he will say as an excuse, I declassified it before I put it in the chat, but I'm going to read them to you. And then I think your body of reporting and our ability to use our common sense will make clear that these were not unclassified messages, even if he is going to retroactively say he declassified them. 11:44 a.m. Eastern Time, Pete Hegseth posted in the Signal chat in all caps, quote, team update. The text beneath this began, quote, time now, 11:44 Eastern Time. The weather is favorable. I just confirmed with CENTCOM we are a go for mission launch. CENTCOM, or Central Command, is the military's combatant command for the Middle East. The Hegseth text continues. 12:15 Eastern Time, F-18s launch, first strike package. 13:45, so 1:45, trigger-based F-18 first strike window starts. Target terrorists is at his known locations, so should be on time. Also, strike drones launch. I'm going to keep reading, but I'm going to stop here. In all of your years, is there any example you've ever covered where a military operation targeting a known terrorist location was declassified before it was communicated with other heads of national security agencies?
Never. And there would be no need to do so. Those people who he was sharing that with all have the highest level security clearances.
Get your damn propaganda out of my damn chat. We don't like Trump pedo ass over here. Okay, goodbye. This is not a Trump supporting channel, bitches.
So why would he need to be declassifying information to share it with, for instance, the CIA director, who was also in that chat, or the national security advisor? I mean, Pete Hegseth, when he's sharing this, does not know that Jeffrey Goldberg, who does not have a security clearance, we should emphasize, was in that room. So if he is going to make an argument, and we're going to see, I guess, what his statement is when the full report comes out, that he declassified at the time, my question is, why? Why would you need to? If this is operational information that you're sharing with the CIA director, the national security advisor, people of that level, there's no need to declassify it. They're allowed to see classified information. So something about this doesn't really quite wash in the sequencing, which is, I would think, of why it's important to kind of come back to this IG finding that it was properly classified in the first place. If Hegseth is going to say now, well, I declassified it, that seems sort of, to me, like a retroactive excuse that he would not have made had this information not become public as it did.
Let me read you a few other of the texts that he sent. More F-18s launched, the second strike package. 215 strike drones on target. This is when the first bombs will definitely drop, pending earlier trigger-based targets. 1536 F-18 second strike starts, also for sea-based Tomahawks launched. We are currently clean on OPSEC, that is operational security. Godspeed to our warriors. It is a real-time TikTok of an ongoing, of a military operation as it's happening in real time. And just, I don't mean to be dense here, but is there any example you've ever covered of an ongoing military operation being declassified in the moment of it happening?
No, not being declassified. I mean, there are plenty of examples of senior level officials sharing information in real time. I'm not aware of the Secretary of Defense sharing them with so many other people in the cabinet this way, but if they were in the Situation Room or if he were briefing people, it's conceivable. This is the kind of information that's kept in a very tight circle of people and shared on secure government communication systems for a reason. While Pete Hegseth is sharing that information in that Signal chat, Jeffrey Goldberg, as he's reported, was sitting in his car watching it come across onto his phone. I mean, it really gives you a sense of just how dramatic the breach was here, that this information in real time, as you say, was being broadcast out to a civilian. And I've said this before, had this ended up with a much less scrupulous journalist, somebody could have tweeted this in real time. Yep. Somebody might have thought, hey, I've got a great scoop. I'll just go ahead and write the story now about a bombing operation that's about to begin in Yemen. We obviously did not do that. And in our earlier reporting, we detail how we handled it. But that's the risk here, is that he's sharing this information in real time. If that had become known to the Houthis, who have surface-to-air missiles, who have air defenses, the lives of those pilots would immediately be put at risk, because they would know, the Houthis would know, that the attack was coming and when it was coming.
Boy, oh boy, we are dealing with a bunch of amateur idiots. The whole entire Trump administration, I guess they got some white powder in the White House, honey, and they hitting it, because this don't make no damn sense. You cannot be this dumb.
American troops. That is the conclusion from one of the most damning reports from the Pentagon Inspector General in history. And this report stems from an extensive investigation into the Defense Secretary's decision to share sensitive war plans on a group chat that actually turned out to include a journalist, Jeffrey Goldberg. Now, Hegseth revealed in that chat the exact times the fighter jets would launch, where they were going to fly, when they would hit their targets, so what the targets were, obviously, meaning that the American pilots of those jets were at risk. It is a rare conclusion about a sitting Secretary of Defense. And news of this report comes as questions are mounting about Hegseth's control at the Pentagon and his competence after a second strike on an alleged drug boat. That strike killing 2 survivors who were reportedly clinging to the wreckage. Now, tonight, Trump was forced to say that he would release the video of that second strike.
You released video of that first boat strike on September 2nd, but not the second video. Will you release video of that strike so that the American people can see for themselves what happened?
I don't know what they have, but whatever they have, we'd certainly release. No problem.
Now, of course, Trump has talked similarly about the Epstein files, his taxes, his MRI, but this time might be different. Maybe Trump thinks it will help Hegseth. It's unclear. But this is the video that Hegseth now claims that he himself did not watch live. He says now he didn't see it. Too many other things to do. That, of course, was after he had boasted originally on Fox News that he had watched the entire thing live back in September. Now, the Washington Post reports that if the video of the blast that killed the 2 survivors on September 2nd were made public, people would be horrified, said one person who watched the actual live feed. But it comes as more people, including staunch conservatives, are suggesting Hegseth could be guilty of an actual war crime. Listen to his former Fox News colleague, Andrew Napolitano, who now works at the Trump-friendly station Newsmax.
Everybody along the line who did it, from the Secretary of Defense to the Admiral to the people who actually pulled the trigger, should be prosecuted for a war crime for killing these 2 people.
Right, that's not mincing words. It wasn't mincing words at all. And then there's the brutal headline from conservative columnist George Will, who wrote, "A sickening moral slum of an administration." And then went on to write, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth seems to be a war criminal without a war. An interesting admission. Okay. And then listen to Republican Senator Rand Paul, who said Hegseth is either lying or incompetent yesterday.
There is a question of the legality of bombing people who are shipwrecked or incapacitated. I frankly think it's absolutely illegal.
This may be why the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, Roger Wicker, who voted to confirm Hegseth, is now refusing to say whether or not he has confidence in Trump's defense secretary.
Do you have confidence in him? Would you say that? Can you say if you do? Thanks for your time.
And while all these questions swirl around Hegseth, who, of course, calls himself the Secretary of War, he is refusing to sit down for tough interviews, turning down multiple interview requests from CNN and others. But an interview was released last night, which appears to have been taped before news of this whole second strike imbroglio. And in that conversation, which was with Stephen Miller's wife, Katie, Hegseth talks about whether he'd let Stephen Miller babysit his kids and what he eats for breakfast.
Who would you trust to babysit your kids?
Who would I trust to babysit my kids?
This can only be another member of the cabinet.
Only another member of the cabinet? Oh, I mean, not.
You can't answer it because they're all idiots. Who would you have to watch your kids in the Trump administration?
Your husband or Marco.
Who would you trust to do your grocery shopping?
Oh, Bobby Kennedy. I have the same breakfast every morning: bacon, eggs, and sausage, and something with meat at lunch, and then whatever she makes for dinner. Meatballs are really, really good. Homemade meatballs, a little sausage in there.
Mm-hmm.
Kristen Holmes is out front live outside the White House. Kristen, is the president as confident about Hegseth in private as he claims to be in public right now?
Well, I think you need to look at that White House statement, because the last line of the statement from Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt said the president stands by Pete Hegseth, and that was a calculated decision. Think about all of the stories that we have put forward saying that there is doubt in certain members of the cabinet where we have not gotten that kind of a statement back, in which they say this is fake news, but then kind of let it go. They have made a calculated decision. In this instance, remember, this was just in response to this Inspector General report, that they are going to stand by Hegseth. And there is some thought that goes into that. The reason is they expended so much political and personal capital, so many of them, to get him across the finish line. It's going to take a lot for them to try and get rid of him, or to get rid of him. But one thing to keep a note here, you mentioned this, when it comes to Venezuela, when it comes to this second strike, we are hearing louder and louder calls from Republicans as well as Democrats. And tomorrow we are going to see the Admiral Bradley, who essentially kind of seems as though he has been somewhat of a scapegoat. We'll see if that is how it plays out on the Hill, talking to senators. And there's going to be a lot of questions about what Hegseth's role was. And then you're going to hear from those senators again. And one thing is clear: if the calls get louder and louder, and if they get too loud, it is likely the White House will start to at least have to have these conversations with these senators, not just standing by Hegseth. So we'll see how this all plays out once you actually have that admiral talking to those senators. But again, we've been down this road before, Aaron. They expended a lot of capital on Pete Hegseth. They're going to keep him. As of now, they're saying they're standing by him.
All right, Kristen, thank you very much. And out front now, Democratic Congresswoman Chrissy Houlihan. She's on the Armed Services and Intel committees. A lot to ask you about this evening, Congresswoman. This Inspector General report, though, a pretty incredible thing to have come out, right? To say that a Secretary of Defense had risked endangering the lives of American troops. It comes out as Hegseth is also now being criticized by some of those Republicans and conservatives that I was just sharing a few moments ago. Do you think that Hegseth at this moment is actually in danger of losing his job as Defense Secretary?
First of all, thank you for having me. And the answer to your question is I sure hope he's in danger, because from the moment he was confirmed, I believe that he was incompetent and a liar all combined. And now I hope that people are starting to see through all of the things that are unfolding, whether it's Venezuela or the results of the IG's report, just how hazardous this particular Secretary of Defense is, and how much he puts the men and women in uniform in harm's way, and how much as a consequence our national security is in danger.
So the New York Times just a few moments ago reported, and we were just going through this, that Hegseth had actually approved contingency plans if there were survivors of the strikes, which said, the contingency plan said that the military would attempt to aid anyone who appeared helpless or out of the fight. So then you would say, well, then why did the second strike come in when two people are clinging for their lives to the side of the boat? Well, the contingency plan says the military would try to kill survivors if they took what was deemed a hostile act. And apparently officials are saying that one of the survivors, or telling the Times, that one of the survivors radioed for help. And then Admiral Bradley ordered the second strike. As I've laid that out to you in terms of a timeline, in terms of the contingency plan itself, would that in any way possibly exonerate Hegseth?
I don't believe so. And one of the things I was interested in as new information to me is that you mentioned that President Trump is able and willing to release the second tape. I'm glad that that is the case and look forward to that. But I also look forward to the audio as well being released to understand, and the video within the room itself, to understand who was there, who was listening, what was being said. All of those things, including the details that you just laid out, need to come to light, need to be part of the oversight process. Whether they are done by the Intelligence Committee or the Armed Services Committee, the American public deserves the oversight that the Congress would allow us to provide.
So I want to ask you also about our K-File, CNN's K-File unearthed video of Pete Hegseth from 2016. And he said something specific about U.S. soldiers' conduct and following lawful orders from the chain of command. Here's what he said.
I do think there have to be consequences for abject war crimes. If you're doing something that is just completely unlawful and ruthless, then there is a consequence for that. That's why the military said it won't follow unlawful orders from their commander-in-chief. There's a standard, there's an ethos, there's a belief that we are above what so many things that our enemies or others would.
I love when they go back and get the old footage of them saying totally opposite of what they're saying now. Here, this moron is basically telling the military to don't do things that is illegal, but yet you are telling the military to do illegal shit, you moron.
Do.
That, of course, is what you, and obviously, Congresswoman, you are an Air Force veteran. You and other Democratic colleagues also who served in the armed forces said in the video you put out, which Hegseth called seditious. Here is that clip.
Our laws are clear. You can refuse illegal orders.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You must refuse illegal orders.
For the dummies in the comments, you must refuse illegal orders. I know, some of you idiots don't know what illegal means, but you can go right to Google.
No one has to carry out orders that violate the law or our Constitution.
And there you are at the end, Congresswoman. So what's your reaction when you hear this, when you hear Hegseth, at the time, the commander-in-chief that he was referring to, saying the military won't follow unlawful orders from their commander-in-chief, was Barack Obama?
Sure, I've seen both of the videos that you just showed, and I've also seen a really good mashup of the two videos of the five of us, actually six of us, and then the secretary. And you wouldn't know that we were saying
Y'all do know Trump said he loved the uneducated.
anything different than one another, or we're on opposite sides or at different parties. We are all singing from the same hymnal, so to speak.
Trump and Hegseth is going to damn prison. That's going to be a great day in America when Trump takes his mentally ill ass to prison. That's where he belongs. He's a 34-time felon and a pedo.
And so what I'm struggling with is, how did Secretary Hegseth go from saying that to also then the enormous disdain that he has for the JAG, the group of people in the military who make sure to advise on our laws and make sure to tell us what is appropriate and inappropriate to do. He's gotten rid of the JAG. He's dismissed them out of the room in many occasions. And this is another proof point of ours that says that he does not deserve the job that he has, and we need to make sure that he is removed from office.
We need to make sure Donald Dusty Trump is removed from office. He is effing up the country every time he goes in a meeting. His old ass is asleep. You know, there was a time where he ran a campaign talking about Sleepy Joe. Well, we gonna say Sleepy Dawn.
Stopped. It's about 85% stopped by sea. You probably noticed that. People aren't wanting to be delivering by sea, and we'll be starting to stop them by land also. The land is easier, but that's going to start very soon. We warn them, stop sending poison to our country.
Well, as President Trump prepares more action to combat narco-terrorism, Democrats are busy attacking the administration. They're jumping on the Washington Post report that claims Secretary of War Pete Hegseth ordered the military to kill all alleged narco-terrorists aboard a suspected drug smuggling vessel. Well, Hegseth denies the reporting, but that's not stopping Democrats from accusing him of war crimes.
Do you believe if there was a second strike to eliminate any survivors, that constitutes a war crime?
It seems to. If what has been reported is accurate, I've got serious concerns about anybody in that chain of command.
Trump, go immediately to hell, and all of your supporters.
So I think it's very possible there was a war crime committed, even if you accept their legal theory that it is a war crime.
If that reporting is true, it's a clear violation of the DOD's own laws of war. This rises to the level.
Trump, stay away from them kids. Stay away from the kids.
Level of a war crime, if it's true.
But beyond the inflammatory rhetoric, there is some concern in Congress over the Pentagon's actions. Republican-led congressional committees will take a closer look in order to ensure that there's proper oversight. Joey, we just asked Senator Blackburn about this, about the calls that are bipartisan now for, more explanation that supports the legal justification for these strikes. So what is your take? Is the request for more information reasonable here, or are the Democrats taking it too far by accusing Hegseth of war crime?
Well, if you're Secretary Hegseth and you believe that these truly are false allegations, then you welcome an investigation so they can find out who these anonymous sources are, because that's the calling your bluff, right? If you're going to say this, then now you're going to have to come forward in some way, even if it isn't publicly. The other side of it is I think there is some heat that all politicians are getting for some sort of oversight on these strikes. I'm not fully against that. This is what I'll tell you. There are a lot of scenarios. The Pentagon's put a couple forward, which tells me they're not landed on an answer. They need to be smart, not say too much in case they do get in a legal battle here. But they're saying stuff like, if they left the boat afloat, regardless of somebody alive there or not, then you're leaving the drugs and something that can be hazardous in other navigation there, a big boat that's just swimming around. The other thing that I felt to be a better explanation is an enemy combatant doesn't have to have a gun to be a danger or a threat. The original rebut or retort, I think it came from Caroline Leavitt or someone that was a spokesperson, was if there were people alive on the boat, this was the very first strike. So we don't know what proximity our people had to them to get to them. And the idea is—
To the dummy in the chat, I don't have any kids. Worry about your dirty, dusty kids. I don't have any. Worry about your multiple baby daddies and your no milk having ass kids. Okay, thank you.
Is if you leave anybody alive on that boat, they can signal and let others know what's happening. They can also retaliate through radio to any of their combatants that's in the area and start something they didn't want to start. All of those are justifiable reasons to continue to strike when it comes to rules of war. At the end of the day, I'm just not shedding a tear over somebody who's trying to.
You're right. MAGA is already dead. DEAD. Dead.
Smuggle, lethal things into our country, and it's probably done terrible things to other people to do it. It just doesn't move the needle for me, and I don't think it moves the needle for most Americans.
I think you're probably right about that. I did hear, Tom, yesterday on our air, Dan Hoffman, who was formerly with the CIA intelligence expert now, and a great contributor.
MAGA are a bunch of people who support nasty folks that do horrible things to children. Pat yourself on the back. You deserve to be in hell.
To Fox News, he was saying, kind of drawing a distinction between the in the water attacks versus on land. And as President Trump has indicated, we're preparing to escalate, our interventions here with the narco terrorists and proceed on land. What Mr. Hoffman was explaining was, look, if we take this on land, that's an escalation from this battle in water. Right now, these strikes in the water, and the Trump administration will be well served in presenting more information, particularly to Congress. Do you think that's warranted? Does Congress need more information?
Probably. I mean, I don't need the information from where I sit, but if I were in Congress, the more information, the better. I'd probably ask, hey, why don't you give us an update? But I honestly, you're probably not surprised. I don't see the big fuss about taking 2 shots instead of 1. I mean, we're murdering them from the sky, and you want to do it in 1 bomb, but you can't do it in 2? It seems a little silly to me, but, you can go and have your arguments. Meanwhile, they're going to keep knocking these boats out of the water.
You're absolutely right. Since September, about 80 people have been killed in these strikes. But Alicia, you made the point before, so well made, that this is all about stopping the flow of drugs and remembering the so many countless families that have needlessly and senselessly lost loved ones to fentanyl poisoning. I mentioned Sam Chapman yesterday, who's done great advocacy work on securing our borders and stopping the flow. He appreciates the spotlight and what the Trump administration is doing here. And to what Joey was just saying, before, maybe we've got some questions on the fringes, and these are probably very important questions, but the hearts and minds of Americans are probably behind this effort.
We also have to keep in mind that there are members of Congress in the House and Senate, Republicans, Democrats, who are frustrated with the administration that they weren't consulted on the decisions to strike these boats. So there is, I think, some of that floating around in what we're hearing. And also, I actually have a question for Joey, because I've heard so much talk about rules of war, laws of war, and they keep bringing that up when it comes to the double tap. And then also, we're talking about the protocol here. Was the commander who issued the strike, did he check with the secretary first? Did he do it without consultation? Like, how much of all of that will go into this? And can you explain a little of that?
Yeah, so first of all, I'm an enlisted man, so my understanding of it is at the ground level, and I don't purport to be more read in on it than that. I can only compare it to other things. I mean, I know that when we struck the facilities in Iran, we didn't look to see if anybody was halfway alive before we sent the next round in, right? So situation dictates what you do. What they're arguing is if they had eyes on potentially injured individuals that were still alive and took a strike specifically to kill them rather than to mitigate any other threat, then that would be wrong, morally wrong, and against our own laws that we have. The president has said that his disregard for international law stops when international law stops doing the right thing, and that's an argument that he has. And so that would be more important here than our laws when it comes to things like, Obama droning American citizens.
Yeah, we gotta address one of these comments in the chat. Hold on. I gotta address this, because this is why I say that you people are slow. Look at this moron put in the chat. Funny how these loons hate Trump so much that they will side with criminals. Do you know what a damn criminal is? You do realize that Trump is a certified criminal, 34-time convicted felon. Are you okay?
overseas. And so there's a lot of ambiguity both to the law that regulates how they're doing this and the morality of it.
Joey, we just are getting a soundbite in that I want to play. This is President Trump. He was asked just moments ago about these allegations against.
Oh, we're going to have a lovely night with you weirdos. Somebody said, no, he is not. Are you saying that Trump is not a convicted felon of 34 times? This is what I say about you Trump supporters. You people are weird and brainless. And like Donald Trump says, he loves the uneducated because you folks are stupid.
Secretary of War Hegseth committing war crimes. Let's listen here.
I don't know anything about it. He said he did not say that, and I believe him 100%.
You don't know if there was
You're talking about the two men?
The second strike to kill the two men.
No, he said he didn't do it. He said he never said it.
Okay, so Trump being asked there on Air Force One just moments ago about Secretary Hegseth saying, kill them all, when apparently there was one strike and then a follow-up strike. Defense Secretary Hegseth has denied this, and that report was based on two anonymous sources. So to your point earlier, you know, if there is a further inquiry, an inquiry maybe should be done into the reporting.
Yeah, I mean, there's a chance there's semantics being played here. You know, when he gave the initial strike, they said, sir, we weren't fully successful. And he said, well, I want it to be successful. What does that mean?
This how I know you are some dumb MFs. All that you put in the chat, you know, I just hit delete and it's gone, you moron. Don't waste your time typing shit that I'm just going to delete. Use the little brain that Donald Trump's that Donald Trump likes, that you have. Small brain.
You know, it depends on the words used and how they were used.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe.
Click here to subscribe. Donald Trump is going to prison, and that's going to be a very lovely day. What are you Trump supporters going to do when Donald Trump takes his raggedy ass to jail, to prison? Because that's where he belongs.
Reality TV and politics. Donald Trump has had one and only one play: bullying his opponents into silence. He did it as a failed casino owner who bankrupted his properties and screwed over his contractors. He did it as a reality TV host known for firing people. And he's done it as president who tries every day to intimidate people with no regards for the rights or well-being of the American people. I'll say this for the guy: while he's never seemed to do much else right, for most of Donald Trump's career, bullying people has worked out for him. But not now. Because I won't let it happen. The American people won't let it happen. President Trump is trying to silence me, threatening to kill me for saying what is true. And he sent his Secretary of Defense after me. And it's not going to work. Here's how we got here. A week and a half ago, Senator Slotkin and I, along with others who also served in the military and the intelligence communities, we released a video with a simple message to service members that they must refuse illegal orders. Nothing was controversial about that. Everyone must follow the law. No one may break the law. This is pretty basic stuff. Seeing that video, here's how any other president would have responded. They would have said two words: of course. But that's not how this president responded. We've become so accustomed to Donald Trump's behavior that it is worth emphasizing. The President of the United States said that 2 U.S. senators and 4 members of the House of Representatives should be arrested, hanged, executed for something we said, for something that is true. My family knows the cost of political violence. My wife, Gabby, was shot in the head and nearly died while speaking with her constituents. The president should understand this too. He has been the target of political violence himself. The Speaker of the Minnesota House of Representatives, Melissa Hortman, and her husband were murdered in their home this year. The governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, had his house firebombed this year. Then Charlie Kirk was assassinated at Utah Valley University, a place I visited just a few weeks ago with Republican Senator John Curtis. Faced with a wave like this, every other president we have ever had in the history of this nation would have tried to heal the country. But we all know Donald Trump. He uses every single opportunity to divide us. And that's dangerous. The president's words carry tremendous weight. People listen to him. And he knows that. And that's exactly why he does what he does. He makes these threats to silence people. And if that doesn't work, he abuses his power to intimidate people. And with the consent of Republicans in the United States Senate, he has surrounded himself with people like the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, who will do whatever he says with no question, no matter what. Trump and Hegseth, they care more about publicity than they do about the rule of law. That's how I ended up finding out via a tweet that the Secretary of Defense was ordering an investigation into me. The same Secretary of Defense who has, from the moment he was nominated, has been historically unqualified for this position. The same Secretary of Defense who is reported to have ordered a second strike to kill shipwreck survivors in the Caribbean. If there is anyone who needs to answer questions in public and under oath, it is Pete Hegseth. It's a dangerous moment for the United States of America when the president and his loyalists use every lever of power to silence United States senators for speaking up. But we all know that this isn't about me, and it's not about the others in that video. They're trying to send a message to retired service members, to government employees, to members of the military, to elected officials, and to all Americans who are thinking about speaking up. You better keep your mouth shut or else. This has been a singular focus of President Trump's second term. Not addressing costs, not creating jobs, intimidating people, and going after the people he views as his political opponents. He's done it to companies. You better write a check to build my ballroom, or I might not approve your merger. He's done it with universities. You better fire your president, or I'll pull your research funding. He's even done it to late night hosts. You better not make jokes that I do not like, or I'll get you taken off the air, and I'm going to take your company's broadcast license. And he does it every week with Republicans in the House and the Senate. You better toe the party line, or I'll make sure you never get reelected. Folks, this comes at a cost. And not only to American companies, colleges, and comedians. It damages every American's freedom of speech and the balance of powers that form the foundation of our democracy. Because when Republicans in Congress are too afraid to disagree with this president, it means that his bad ideas go unchallenged. He has slapped reckless tariffs on countries across the globe, skyrocketing the cost of everything from groceries to school supplies. Republicans historically, well, at least a year ago, they hated tariffs. But when it comes to voting to undo them, they are too afraid of Donald Trump. So Americans pay more for just about everything because of spineless politicians. It's the same with healthcare costs. There are Republicans in the House and the Senate who really want to do something to prevent these healthcare premiums from spiking for millions of Americans. The solutions are simple, but President Trump says he doesn't want to. So nothing happens. Nothing except a government shutdown. It goes on and on. The president has gone too far. Everybody needs to wake up. The occupant of the Oval Office is ignorant to the Constitution and has no regard for the rule of law. Trying to silence me, in proposing to court-martial me, in threatening to kill me for fighting back when our democracy demands that we must fight back. President Trump has crossed a line. And this time, it's not going to work. I will not be intimidated by this president. I am not going to be silenced by this president or the people around him, because I've given too much in service to this country to back down to this guy. In 1991, when Donald Trump was driving the Taj Mahal casino into bankruptcy, I was getting shot at over Iraq and Kuwait. In 2001, after Donald Trump said that the collapse of the Twin Towers meant he now owned the tallest skyscraper in Manhattan, I was carrying flags honoring 9/11 victims into space on a rocket ship. In 2003, when Donald Trump was writing birthday greetings to the monster Jeffrey Epstein, I was the first on the scene to recover the bodies of my fellow astronauts who died when Space Shuttle Columbia exploded during re-entry. In 2011, when Trump was hosting a reality show and peddling conspiracy theories against President Barack Obama, I was sitting next to my wife's hospital bed as she recovered from a gunshot wound to the head. My point is this: I've been through a lot worse in service to my country. The president and Pete Hegseth are not going to silence me. They aren't going to keep me from speaking out, and they're not going to keep me from doing my job. Enough of the bullying, enough of the intimidation, enough of the threats, enough of your nonsense. Doesn't help anyone in our country afford their groceries or pay their medical bills. And it erodes the rights of every American. My job is to fight for them, to stand up for the Constitution, and nothing is going to stop me from doing my job. Thank you, and I'll take some questions. Hold on a second. Give me that folder there. Just sit this down here. Can you, well, I know it's Manu from CNN, but for everybody, just starting with you, just say who you are, you know, what station.
The White House said today that Admiral Bradley gave the order for that second strike on the Venezuelan boat. They also said this was a lawful strike. Yesterday, you said the second strike could be a war crime. Do you think that Bradley committed a war?
Let me just start, Manu, by saying that there needs to be an investigation. We need to pull some of these members of DOD and the military into the armed services committees in the House and the Senate. You know, that's what the White House is saying. I hope what has been reported is not accurate. I revere members of the United States Navy, especially special operators, Navy SEALs. These are the most highly trained, individuals in our military. I have deep, deep respect for them. So I hope what we are hearing is not accurate. I will say though, as somebody who has sunk 2 ships myself, that folks in the military need to understand, the law of the sea, the Geneva Conventions, what the law says. And I'm concerned that if there were, in fact, as reported, survivors clinging to a damaged vessel, that could be, over a line. I hope it's not the case. I truly do.
Should Admiral Bradley resisted that order?
Again, I am, not sure of all the facts yet. I don't want to prejudge before we have all the information. I think it's important for there to be an investigation. The inspectors general of DOD needs to investigate this. Unfortunately, an unqualified Secretary of Defense fired a bunch of them and got rid of a bunch of lawyers. I mean, Pete Hegseth, do I have a lot of confidence in DOD? Well, hopefully we have, inspectors general there that will be doing an impartial investigation. I think we should wait for the results of those investigations.
Regarding this press conference, the investigation into your actions, have you spoken with DOD or DOJ or anyone? Have there been any conversations, any interviews yet?
Like I said in my remarks, I was notified of a potential court-martial through a tweet by the Secretary of Defense. I mean, think about that for a second. How ludicrous is that? That's the only notification that we have received to date. And I think that says a lot about who Pete Hegseth is and what he cares about. He doesn't care about the law. He doesn't care about process. He doesn't care about accountability. He cares about views on his Twitter account. And that's a big problem. I mean, I want to ask you guys this question. Have you ever in the history of our country seen a less qualified or less professional Secretary of Defense? I cannot think of one.
Senator Kelly, Nathaniel District News. Are you concerned about threats on your life? Have you stepped up your personal security and, of course, the security of your wife?
Hey, I'm no stranger. Gabby and I are no stranger to political violence. We get a lot of threats already. She continues to get threats. She gets threats on her life, more so today because what Donald Trump said about me 10 days ago, that I should be hanged, that I should be executed. The threats on us have obviously gone up. I'm not going to get into details about my personal security. We take these threats very seriously. And I take, the threats from this president seriously. How many times in our country's history have you heard a president of the United States say that members of the Senate and the House should be hanged and executed? I mean, I can't think of one. Those words carry a lot of weight. The number of threatening calls that we get into our office have skyrocketed. And they were very graphic. I mean, some of them were put, not from my office, but another member put them out there for people to hear. Ones we get are worse than that. So I take this seriously. But again, that's why he does these things, because he thinks he can shut me up. I have First Amendment rights. I'm a United States Senator. I am doing my job. I'm on the Armed Services and the Intelligence Committee. He ain't going to shut me up. I mean, he intimidates other people. I'm not intimidated by Donald Trump or Pete Hegseth or anybody else.
Thank you, Senator Nicole Killian with CBS News. Are you aware, just back on Venezuela, are you aware of whether or not the Secretary has had, and Secretary Hegseth, he's had any conversations with any members of the Armed Services Committee, and in terms of these calls to investigate, do you believe the Secretary and Admiral Bradley should appear before the Armed Services?
They absolutely should appear. You know, I've talked to the chairman of Armed Services about it and the ranking member. They should absolutely appear. I'm not so confident they will. This is not an administration that tends to follow any norms. But we need to get to the bottom of this, of what happened. And we are not Russia and Iraq. I'm really concerned if the reporting is correct. Again, I hope the reporting about this incident is not accurate. What the White House said today actually indicated it might be, but we're going to have to see.
Going back to the DOD matter, are you considering any legal action for this risk of being court-martialed or any of the fees or risk investigation?
You mean like me suing Donald Trump for what he said? I think what he said about us is dangerous. It's ridiculous. It is a violation of our constitutional rights as Americans and our rights as senators to do our job. And he's trying to intimidate us. But I have not considered that, not at this point.
Thank you, Senator. Do you see this as fundamentally First Amendment issue for you that you want to highlight against the president who's trying to silence you? And how do you see the whole process playing out?
Well, again, this isn't really about me. And that's why I think people are kind of got this a little bit off here. It's not about me. It's not about the other 5 members in the video. It's not about Alyssa Slotkin, Chris DeLuzio, Chrissy Houlihan, Jason Crow, Maggie Goodlander. It's not about us. This is about a president who doesn't want anybody to say anything that he does not like. I don't think he understands the Constitution. I'm serious about this. I think he is ignorant to the Constitution and the rule of law. And he just wants to silence us, and it starts with us. And that's one of the reasons people say, well, why wouldn't you just back off? Because this isn't about me. This is about what he will do next. Who's he going to go after next? Which service member? Which government employee? Which citizen who decides to say something that this president doesn't like? And then he goes after them, in my case, with the Secretary of Defense. Who knows what's next? With the Attorney General? I mean, this DOJ has been just, attacking people for all kinds of stuff. And what's next? Our First Amendment rights? Ain't happening.
Noah Robertson, Washington Post. Can you tell us anything more about the FBI's involvement in the inquiry into you and the other lawmakers who appeared in the video? Have you scheduled an interview with them?
We haven't heard all that much. We got notified. I think the better question is, what is their motivation? Like, did this come from the FBI? Do you guys think the FBI, they went into their meeting that morning and said, of all the stuff that's going on in the country right now, we got to get right on top of this. These guys said something the president didn't like, and now we've got to do something about it. Or do you think it's possible that the president told his FBI director to tell the FBI agents to reach out to these guys? So I think this is a good question for you. All of you in here should be asking the FBI those questions. I don't have the answers to them. Yeah.
Can you tell us anything more about the Senate Armed Services Committee's inquiry into the September 2nd strike, the nature of the request for information submitted, what information has been sent back from DOD so far in your conversations with the chairman?
Well, we had a brief on the first 3 strikes. And I have said this, before 10 days ago, that they're tying themselves in knots trying to explain why this entire operation is legal. And I imagine eventually, I hope you have an opportunity to see the legal argument that they made to do this. It's important for the American people to see it. We have to get folks before the committee. And, that process might take a little while. But I ultimately think we're going to get to the bottom of this. And again, if what seems to happen actually happened, I'm really worried about our service members. I was talking about this from the beginning of this operation, that the thing that I am most concerned about is the very difficult situations that this Secretary of Defense is going to put service members into. And it's because this guy is so unqualified for the job. I mean, think about this. He runs around on a stage talking about lethality and warrior ethos and killing people. We have the most competent, capable military this planet has ever seen by far. That's not the message that needs to come from the Secretary of Defense. The message should be about what's our mission and accountability and the rule of law and training. And let me make sure you're equipped to do really hard jobs. Let me give you all the tools you need to do something that often is an impossible mission. And instead, he runs around on a stage like he's a 12-year-old playing Army. And it is ridiculous. It is embarrassing. And I can't imagine what our allies think of looking at that guy in this job, one of the most important jobs in our country. In my view, after the President of the United States, it is the next most important job. He is in the National Command Authority for Nuclear Weapons. And last night, he's putting out on the internet turtles with rocket-propelled grenades. Have you seen this? This is the Secretary of Defense. This is not a serious person. He should have been fired after Signalgate. And then every single day after that.
I was reporting ABC News. Just to put a finer point on it, because you were quite vocal about the sort of flimsy legality that was being offered during the briefings. Were these sort of strikes that are now in the news what you were making reference to when you posted that video telling members of the military that they needed to feel okay to obey orders that they felt were illegal?
Based on who this president is and who the Secretary of Defense is, and specifically things that the president has said in the past and things he was talking about doing in the future. Let me give you an example. 2016, he's talking about something on a debate stage that was clearly illegal. And he was reminded by Brett Baer from Fox News that that would be an illegal order. Military won't do that. You know what the president's response was to that? The military will not refuse my orders, implying that even if they are illegal, they will not refuse them. He's also talked about shooting protesters in the legs. Then he's talking about deploying more troops to American cities and using those cities as training grounds. Do you know what that means? That means using the American people for the military to train on. So we were looking forward to try to head something off at the pass that could have been really, really bad. So it wasn't about this specific thing.
The NDAA conference report is set to come out later this week, or over the weekend, or early next week. In addition to that, you all have not yet conferenced out the defense appropriations bill for the current fiscal year. Do you see either of those as options for you and other lawmakers concerned about the Defense Department, the actions in Venezuela, and other situations to address those legislatively in either the NDAA or defense approach?
Well, I think it could be if we could get bipartisan support to do something like that. Sure. That's sometimes challenging because, remember, my Republican colleagues, not all of them, but most of them, are fearful of this president. They do not want to cross him. I mean, they see what just happened to me. I said something that he did not like, and he said, I will be hanged, executed, prosecuted. He doesn't even have the order right. Yeah.
Michael Chanel with MS Now. You mentioned earlier that the video was meant to tell service members something that's already law, that they're not required to obey, to act on legal orders. Since it already is the law and presumably service members are aware of the law, why did the six of you guys feel it was necessary to make the video?
Well, I think it's good for people to get a reminder. And we wanted to show that we had their back and we understood the situation they were in. Pretty simple. And we said something that is in the Uniform Code of Military Justice. According to the law of armed combat, we stated something pretty simple. Every service member doesn't hear these reminders as frequently as other service members. So we felt it was important to say under the circumstances. Right here. Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you, Senator. Joe Capponi with the Associated Press. When you participated in the video, did you expect that the president would respond? Was that part of your expectation?
We did a video before that he did not respond to. I was really surprised that he responded at all. And I thought if he was going to respond, so what I just said when I gave my remarks, I thought he would have said, of course, members of the military shouldn't follow illegal orders. So when he said, I was sitting in the skiff next to Alyssa Slotkin, by the way, when somebody comes in with a little piece of paper and it says, I could see what it said on it as it was handed to her, President just called for your execution. She leaves the room. 5 minutes later, she comes back. She says to me, he's called for your execution too. That was not the response we expected.
Two questions. As you say, you're still gathering the facts, still not clear exactly what happened here. But if the Secretary of Defense did issue an order to kill people on the second strike like this, is that an impeachable offense? Taking apart the numbers in the House, but in theory, is that a potentially impeachable offense to you? And then second, healthcare. Short time here to figure out what's going to happen in healthcare. Just what's your involvement right now in response to this accident?
Well, on the first question, I think that's a question for attorneys. I am not an attorney. I don't pretend to be one. That is true. Of course, I do not know the specifics, on that part, of the law about impeachment. And again, let me remind folks that we're in the early days of this. And I think it's important to get all the facts for we to understand exactly what happened. Again, I hope what is being reported is not the case. But there needs to be an investigation, and we are a country of laws. Despite the apparent situation we're in with a president of the United States who, in my opinion, does not respect the law. We're a country of laws. We got to hold people accountable. On the healthcare, situation, we've got some time. I'd like to see a bipartisan solution because millions of my constituents, the people I represent in Arizona, and millions of more people across the country are not going to be able to afford their healthcare. And they're one accident or illness away from bankruptcy. People lose their healthcare, they die. We can fix this. We have time to fix this. We know what to do. But again, doesn't seem the president of the United States wants to do anything on this. If he wants to help the American people, he should engage with the United States Congress on fixing this spiking of premiums, fixing this issue.
Have you, Liz Ruskin, Alaska Public Media, have you received messages of support, public or private, from your Republican colleagues?
Yes, and some of it's public.
Tell us a bit about those.
Well, some people put out statements, and I got some private calls, which I will not get into. But there are some, you could Google it. There are some, positive, but we're in an unfortunate period here where we have a president that does not like to be crossed. And if he's going to say to a U.S. senator that you should be executed for what you say, that sends a very chilling message, not only through the United States Senate and the House to Republicans, but across the entire nation.
Thank you, Senator. Ryan Schmelz from Fox News Radio. I wanted to see whether it's the FBI or the Department of War, a lot of them are requesting hearings or
investigations with you. Are you planning to cooperate if that is the case?
I will follow the law.
Jim Kuzingar with the Boston Globe. You mentioned that some of your Republican colleagues have been bullied by the president. With regards to the boat strikes in the Caribbean, what's your level of confidence that this investigation in the Senate Armed Services Committee will go forward and get to the truth?
I have confidence, tremendous confidence in the chairman of the Armed Services Committee, Roger Wicker, senator from Mississippi, and the ranking member, Jack Reed. And I've spoken to him about this, and I know he's going to try to do a thorough job. Where I don't have a lot of confidence is in the Secretary of Defense and what he has done to this department, firing JAG officers, firing inspectors general. He's decimated it. Firing people in the leadership of DOD just because of the color of their skin or if they were a woman. So I have about zero confidence in the Secretary of Defense. I have tremendous confidence in the chairman of the Armed Services Committee.
Connor O'Brien from Politico. Senator Schatz tweeted this afternoon, said Pete Hegseth needs to testify in the month of December before we pass a defense authorization. And I'm just curious, as a member of Armed Services, do you agree with that approach? Should Democrats be open to potentially, holding up an EA to leverage testimony, information, whatever in this process?
I spent 25 years in the United States Navy. I understand the importance of the defense bill and the programs that we authorize and the changes we make to policy through that piece of legislation. I've talked to Senator Schatz, and we'll continue to talk about this, but in general, my view, on this is we've got to be very thoughtful about how we handle the process of the defense bill. Yes.
Just to clarify, you were not briefed on the double tap of the first strike. None of your briefings have included that. If Hegseth will not testify, will you call on Admiral Halsey of Southcom to come in and testify? And then lastly, on Venezuela, should the United States strike inside Venezuelan territory, do you think that is legal?
So I'm going to have a conversation with the chairman and the ranking member about who specifically, we bring in to testify, whether we do it in public or not. I would generally prefer public hearing. We should probably do both. One in a classified setting, one publicly, so the American people could see. I'm still trying to figure out the justification that Donald Trump has if he was to, conduct kinetic strikes into Venezuela. What's the goal? Why hasn't he communicated this to the American people? That's the job of the president, to lay out a case before we go to war. And if it is about removing Maduro, how do you square that with pardoning Juan Hernandez, who is basically the same guy from a different country, who got sentenced to 45 years in prison, and he's barely been there? He's probably hasn't even gotten settled in yet. And the president's going to release him? Doesn't make any sense. And I'll tell you what, regime change as a policy of the United States generally in our history has not worked out well. Think of South Vietnam. Think of the Bay of Pigs, Iraq and Afghanistan. It results in the deaths of U.S. service members without the intended outcome. And in this case, I don't even think we know the intended outcome. President needs to make a case to the American people when he is about to put thousands of American men and women in harm's way. This is not the way to manage the U.S. military. Hey, I want to thank all of you for spending the time here today. I'm sorry the room is so warm in here, but we'll cool it down next time. Thank you. Appreciate it.